Okay, well, welcome everyone here to the first session of Small Talks. I hope you can all hear me. Can you raise your hand if you can hear me? Okay, so that's okay. Well, it's a bit strange that I can hear the chatter going on around me, but we're going to have some serious presentations and discussions here about. You will have two researchers present their case in the next 30 minutes. They will present some innovative solutions for complex societal problems, as we call it. And the first researcher is standing next to me already. He is a research lecturer in nanophysics interface. Previously worked at nanoelectronics in Philips Semiconductors in Enschede. And his research is about an e-nose, an electronic nose, a very sensitive nose that can smell potato rot. Please give it up for Alexander Andreski.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? Prime. Super. This is a new format that we do. I would like today to share with you research that we performed as a feasibility study for a new technology that we wanted to apply as an electronic nose. It is to be used in agriculture, and what we want to do is we want to sense volatile organic compounds that can be used as biomarkers for diseases of these agricultural products that are stored in magazines. Farmers typically store their produce in big magazines. They do this because they want to be flexible on the market, but also because we want to have potatoes or all kinds of other products just when we need them. The storage time is about 1 year, and then you have these big storage places where you can have them like a big mountain mode, like you see here, or they can be placed in crates and stacked together. Typically it takes about a year. They sit there, and they are placed in the magazines immediately after the harvest. So they are still wet, there's still a lot of earth on them, and they are vulnerable to infections in the first few weeks. You can imagine in this big mountain, if there is 1 or 2 potatoes that are infected, it can very quickly spread, and before you know it, the whole harvest is ruined. So it is very important to monitor the health of these potatoes, especially in the first few weeks. The storage compartment is actually quite a high-tech thing. It is a controlled atmosphere with ventilation, with a lot of sensors inside, and even they monitor CO2. It is in the developing world, farmers lose about 30% of the harvest. In the developed world, in Holland, Western Europe, we lose about 4, 5, 6%. That's because we have the knowledge how to store them, but also because we have access to these advanced technologies. Although solving this problem of rot is not very sexy, it's not something that you can say, oh, we have a very cool thing. However, even improving the harvest with a few percent in these developing countries will mean a lot, because potatoes are a staple food, and improving a little bit will relieve a lot of pressure that those societies have. As I said, it's a high-tech system. This is the panel that the farmer sees. All kinds of sensors there measuring temperature, humidity, the cooling system also. The farmer can choose a lot of options. He can even see electricity prices so that he knows when to set his cooling cycles. What we want to do is we want to add a gas sensor somewhere inside the storage that will detect the biomarkers of the disease. Biomarkers are these VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. The challenges are we need to detect very low concentrations, and of course it's outside, kind of, so we need to be not sensitive to temperature, humidity, and so forth. What can you do? You can take one of these miniaturized analytical instruments, typical instruments that you will find in a big chemistry lab. They can do molecular recognition. They can tell you exactly what the composition of the gas is. Put it in a central location and then run tubes to this big mountain of potatoes, put them inside, put them strategically, and these tubes will take gas samples once in a while, take them to the instrument, and the instrument will analyze the gas sample and tell you whether you have this disease or not. However, you can also do this idea. You can have chips, which are gas sensors, and they're autonomous. They have a small battery. They can sense the gas and disperse them in the big mountain of potatoes. You can even, if you like, you can even micro-geotag them so that you can place them in strategic positions, and you can create a 3D map of how the gas is, concentrations inside the big potato storage. You can salvage them later or do what you want. This is what we wanted to do. We wanted to try the feasibility of this kind of a approach to monitoring gas potatoes. The gas sensor that we chose is an electronic nose. Without going into too much details because the time is short, electronic nose works similar to how our olfactory sense works. Electronic nose does not give you the exact composition of the gas, but can tell you, oh, it smells like lemon. It smells like lavender. Although it's not really lavender, it smells like this, it smells like that. An electronic nose is inherently a very smart device. It needs to recognize patterns similar to fingerprint scanners or facial recognition scanners. It has multiple sensors, so-called sensor array. It is already used. Firefighters can use them and categorize where they are. Is there this type of material burning or that type of material burning and so forth. This was the principle that we chose. These are the sensors that we use. Those are micro cantilevers. It's a photo of them, are about 200 micrometers in size. We are looking at from the top. This is the sensitive surface. There are some contacts to measure the sensor. The principle is a resonance frequency change. These beams, they oscillate. They have a functional layer which absorbs the analyte gas that you want to measure. It changes its mass. It changes its resonance frequency. If we track the resonance frequency, we can track the concentration of that analyte in the air. These are some measurements that we perform. Very technical slide. Don't look at the numbers that much. At the right-hand side, you will see how the sensor responds when we switch on and off a certain analyte. And you can immediately see the problem. There is a big background, and there is, we call that drift of the sensor, and there is also noise, unfortunately of the type that we cannot filter away. On the left-hand side, you can see a graph. You can analyze this noise performance on different ways, and you can see that we have a saturation, or this curve here, which kind of limits our performance of the sensor. If we look at that and translate that to real concentrations, we are sitting about 20 ppm. So that's the minimum detection limit that we can achieve. We need to achieve 1 ppm. That's parts per million concentration of the analyte. So we are about 20 times off. So as conclusions, I'm just not going to read through this. Look at me. Although we cannot achieve the sensitivity that is necessary for these dispersed sensors, we are not that far off. The fundamental limits of the sensors do allow this. That was that straight part of the noise curve. However, we have disturbances in the sensors, and that needs to be minimized. That means that we need more practical research of the type, optimize the sensor, optimize the layer, find the way in which you can minimize these disturbances. Then it is possible to create these dispersed sensors and use them in agricultural monitoring or also in other types of sensors. I'd like to thank all the students that work on this. There's been about 20 or 30 of them. And of course, our partners that contributed to this research. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alexander Adreski. Please have a seat, and we can discuss some more. I really liked the beginning of your presentation. You described this big societal problem, especially in the developing world, where farmers lose 30% of their potatoes, stored potatoes, due to rot. The question I had immediately was, if this seems to work, I mean, you still need to do research on it, but will it be available to those farmers? Because they're the poorest part of the world, probably.
Now, a good question. From what we know, the business model that our partner, that Tolsma, the company that makes this, has, is that they do not sell them, but they sell the service. So, in effect, if you partner with this company, they will give you these sensors. They will give you the monitoring system, all those other things that you have, and you can use them as an app.
Yeah.
So you will subscribe to their service, and then you can use all these instruments. So the farmers in developing countries don't really need to buy them. They will just have to have a subscription service. Of course, it is then easier because you don't actually buy anything, but you subscribe to something, and through their countries or maybe to some help organization.
But is the technique in itself, because it's you disperse these sensors over the potatoes, are they expensive to make, or?
Yeah, they are not cheap at the moment. Let's say 10 to 100 euros per piece, but you can salvage them. Many people don't know, but potatoes, after they are stored, they are sorted. They go to sorting machines.
The big ones and the small ones?
Yes, and there is this camera, it makes a photo, and then it punches the bad ones out. You can program the camera to detect this square piece of sensor and just punch it out into a separate, then you can reuse them.
Yeah, yeah. And now you said, okay, so the basic technology seems to work. That's what your research showed, but you still have problems because of all the noise. How to diminish that noise, or how to
interesting question. It is not the fundamental. The fundamental noise types are the limitations that you have because of the nature of that, physical nature of that sensor. The noise types that we have are more disturbances in the measurement electronics. In the sensitive layers themselves, they need to be homogeneous, and those can be solved by just taking ready research already done on coatings, for instance, on electronics, and combining that together with this fundamental technology.
Yeah, and are you actually going to do that? Are you talking about prolongation of that research?
Yeah, we have other sensor types that are higher up the technological readiness level, and we are looking to use them first. And for this type of sensor, we need a little bit of bigger research project together with universities to tackle all these problems that they have.
Okay.
So we are working on that.
You're working on that. Yes. Okay, so later I will allow people in the audience also to ask some questions, but we have a second presentation. Please stay, please stay.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Okay, the next researcher calls himself a new media multitasker. He's a teacher data visualization and data design at Saxion. And he's going to talk about a big societal problem that interests me a lot. As you all know, Bol.com killed all the bookstores in the Netherlands. Zalando killed the clothing shops. iTunes and Spotify killed the music store. And Coolblue killed your neighborhood electronics store. So there's a big change in the way that city centers are being used. They're much more used as a leisure place to leisure. And that change, the question you pose yourself is how to map that change. Okay, please give him an applause. Heinz Havinga.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, that looks good. Okay. Yeah, that's me. Okay, so hi, I'm Heinz. This is a project, high-tech binnenstadsmonitoring. We don't really have a word for binnenstadsmonitor in English, so we keep sort of stumbling around that word. I'm a researcher at the research group of Smart Cities, and this is a project we're working on right now. So we're busy gathering the data, so we don't have a lot of hard conclusions, but hopefully we can tell you a little bit about the problem and what we've been trying to do to solve it. As was said, city centers are changing. They used to be this center of a city where you would come to do shopping, most of the time clothing or electronics or music. And then the internet happened, and everybody was like, well, why would I go outside when I can stay at home? Which is a valid question. But then we have this perfectly nice part of the city that lost its intended use. So we're looking for new ways of how can we keep the city center alive and entertaining and something that people keep going to. And one of the things a lot of cities are aiming for right now is to turn it into sort of a form of entertainment. So the city of Enschede explicitly said going to the city center should be like going to an amusement park. It should be an experience. So okay, that is a goal that you can set for yourself, but is that something that is actually feasible, and is that something people actually want to do, like a city center as an amusement park type experience? One of the problems with this transformation is that currently the way city centers are reporting on is this Binnenstadsmonitor. Once again, we don't know the English term, but these are reports published once a year or once every 2 years, and the data that is gathered is done in a very old-fashioned, static manner. So people counting passerbys once a year, or people doing some surveys, treated 4 times a year. But that doesn't really suit the way cities operate anymore. As being said, cities are transforming into this experience, this organism that keeps changing. You've got events, you've got intervention done by local entrepreneurs, shop owners, stuff like that. For example, the umbrellas in the Deventer city center. We know that people like them, but we don't know the direct impact, and we don't know the amount of impact those umbrellas have. So is this umbrella project something that is worth the cost of hanging all those umbrellas, or could we spend our time and money in a more effective way? Right now, we just don't know. And that is something we're trying to figure out, like how do we measure the success of this changing city center? So the goal right now is that we're working towards a real-time dashboard that allows local government, but also shop owners, to explore relationships between several things. So you can ask a shopper, like, okay, did you enjoy your experience? And they can say, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. But then there's a whole lot of reality happening around that. So it could be there was a nice weather, it could be they were already in a good mood, it could be something else. It could be that we're asking that in an environment that has a lot of trees or a lot of old buildings which they happen to like. So by doing more intensive ways of measuring experiences, we hope we can get more information about relationships. One of the problems we've encountered, once we started this project, a lot of data would have come from public Wi-Fi spots. So a lot of city centers have public Wi-Fi that you can use for free, and we can use to see how people move through the city, how long they stay in a certain place, stuff like that. But then the AVG happened, so privacy in a public place is a whole different playing field right now. So we're experimenting with new methods that are very much opt-in, so people realize they're part of the experiment and that their experience is being measured. One of the things we've been experimenting with are these GPS trackers equipped with a physical like button. For example, we've handed them out at the IJssel, at the Warp, where you come in using the small ferry service. And then we can track people through the city, and we can also see when they see part of the experience of a highlight of the day. So we've noted that the ferry service is very much a highlight of the day because a lot of people press the button at that moment. Another thing we're experimenting with right now is an experience sampling app. So we're going to ask 200 people living in or surrounding Deventer that visit the city center regularly to install that app. And every time they enter the city, we can ask some questions like, how do you feel right now? What is the goal of your visit? Did you bought something? Are you here for the market? Are you here to eat? And by just firing off these short and small surveys, we have data over a longer period of time, and we can do follow-up questions. So if people return later, we can say, oh, you're back again. Has something changed that has changed your opinion about the city center? So right now, we've been doing some of these experiments. This is a heat map of where people with the GPS trackers went during the day when we gave them the GPS trackers. The little dots are the moments they press the like button. So we know they like the Brink a lot, they like the smaller shopping streets with the boutiques a lot, and also the ferry service right here is seen as a highlight of the city. So these are the more traditional methods of measurements we've been experimenting with. We've been using a lot of students' projects like the Smart Solutions projects to do more experimental things where we're not quite sure what will happen, but we're interested if it's a feasible method. So one method we experimenting with was the smart escape room. People could do a free escape room experiment for 15 minutes, solve puzzles, but to solve the puzzles, they would also actually have to answer some survey questions in return. It worked very well, only it was very intense labor-wise, and it was also quite costly to get enough results to get a valid and reliable result. So the idea is great, but we need to scale it down somehow while still offering a cool experience. Another thing we're going to do as well is a virtual reality survey. For example, in Deventer, you have the Grote Kerkhof, and since January, it's no longer allowed to park your cars there. So we've took some 360-degree pictures when cars were still parked there, and pictures when cars were no longer parked there, and have a discussion through a survey with people like, okay, do you think this is a positive change? What do you feel when you see this location? So we're very curious if that helps, if you can show people the same location in different circumstances and see how that changes the experience. So in conclusion, our cities are changing. We have to figure out new ways of measuring that new role of city centers. And we're very curious about your opinion of these types of measurements. And maybe you have some good ideas we can try as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for having us. Oh,
Whoa.
Thank you. Please take a seat.
I'll take a seat.
Thank you for your presentation. Again, also a very complex societal problem that you're
Is off?
trying to answer.
Yours is off.
Is mine off? Okay. Is mine on now? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for your presentation. I was wondering, what's wrong with the word city center monitor or something like that?
That would be fine, actually. But because in local governments, the binnenstadsmonitoring is such a incorporated term in their daily vocabulary, we opt to use the Dutch word for it.
Yeah. So what I like to say, so you have this big problem that you cannot, that inner cities are changing very fast, and you want to be able to monitor that. And the way you approach this problem is having people participate in your research voluntarily,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
And I was wondering, how does that affect the quality of your data if you would be able to do a Big Brother-like research and just track people without them knowing?
Yeah.
Would that, does it affect the outcomes of your research?
Yes, it would, because, for example, the GPS tracker experiment that we do, we only give them to people at the moment that we're giving them out. So it's very limited. It's not a complete view. While if we were still able to use the public Wi-Fi tracking data, we would capture everybody with a smartphone in the city center. So that would be 95% probably.
Yeah.
So that would give a much higher participation. The only nice thing now is that we can get a lot more qualitative data by asking direct questions, and people know that they're part of the research.
Okay, so the answers you get are maybe better for the...
We can go more in depth with them, yeah.
Okay, and what type of group of people participates in this research? Is it?
So what we've seen so far is pretty much it's not limited by age or sex or group sizes as well. It's more by people who have a very conscious decision about their privacy. So when we hand out these GPS trackers, we have to be very concise in saying, okay, we're going to write down your phone number, but that's only because if you forget to turn it into us, we can call you. So we have to have a very good conversation about privacy. It's like, okay, this is what we can see, this is what we can't see.
Yeah.
So that limits the audience that participates a bit.
Okay, so now you did this research already here in the city. Did you find anything that was different than the city already knew from its existing monitor?
Yes, we give a more fine-grained result. So the map that I showed you, we gave a much more precise idea where people hung out.
Was there a surprise in that? Or?
Well, we didn't anticipate the impact of the market on the Brink on Saturday as much. We knew there was a market, and we knew like, okay, people are going to hang out there. but about 2/3 of all GPS measurements we got back were actually from the market, which was a lot more than we expected.
Okay.
That actually made us realize, like, oh, we have to start handing GPS trackers out on moments there aren't markets, because it's such a big thing that we didn't anticipate.
Yeah.
Also, the city of Deventer didn't anticipate.
Yeah. So now a final question from me to the both of you, and then I'll let the people here ask questions. So you're both working on an innovative solution for a complex problem. If you would close your eyes and dream on in 10, 15 years, how does that solution look like? How would it affect society? Starting with you, maybe.
Yeah, starting with me. Well, what we're hoping for is that cities can improve on a more evidence data-based manner. So right now it's people talking, and if shop owners are very vocal about things, that they get more help and their ideas get more traction. But we hope it's going to be based more on a data evidence base, so that cities can start learning from each other better and more at a higher speed.
Okay. Same for you, for the eNose. If you think about, okay, so now at the moment the technology is not ready to be on the market, but in 15 years this will be ready, right?
If you look at the application that we have, it is in the dispersed autonomous sensors. In this way, it's a little bit also connected to what you do, because you do big data. Well, it is still small.
It's still small,
but that's the challenge. And big data has a big impact, especially if you couple that with this kind of autonomous sensing platform. And the word autonomous is more than just something that sits there. It also needs to survive. It also needs to calibrate itself, communicate, find ways in which it is useful beyond first shock or whatever. And when you have this kind of dispersed autonomous sensing or questionnaire platforms, there will be a big impact on the way in which we can maybe model or social interactions also, but also, let's say, potato.
Also physical. So
yeah.
Both of your research are about mapping the world in a more precise way.
Exactly. Yeah. Knowing more about the physical reality, in this case, social interactions. In our case, more physical. But if you have that, you can model it, understand it, gain insights, and act accordingly, let's say, with that.
Yeah.
So I think in 10 or 15 years, I think we'll see far more autonomous machines on the market.
Thanks. Let's see if maybe you can use this. Can I get the mic? Oh, it's being turned on. Does anyone have a question that is sitting here? Please raise your hand if you have, then I come to you with a microphone. Yeah, let's see if it works. No questions at all? Come on. Yeah, there will be questions. Yes, here. Go ahead.
So what is the goal of Deventer City Center? What do they want to monitor exactly?
So right now, the cities we've talked to and our partner in the project are very interested in measuring the impact of different interventions. So changes to public space, events, stuff like that. So that is the main goal of Deventer right now. So the Grote Kerkhof, for example, where no longer cars can park. She had a follow-up question, sorry.
Yes, that's the interventions, measuring the effect of the interventions. But what's the goal of the interventions? So what's their vision on the spectrum on the horizon?
Yes, so the problem on the horizon is that amount of visitors and the time visitors spend in the city center is going down, and they're trying to prevent that, to prevent abandonment of the city center, to bring it a bit dramatically.
Okay, other questions here? No, maybe Milan, continue to what Alexander mentioned as last, that we're going to a world where there will be much more autonomous sensors that can measure pretty much everything, right? In what way does that affect the way we live and we work?
Autonomous means also not only smart but also intelligent. And that's one step more than what we have. We have smartphones because they can display pictures, take photos, but they don't really have decision power. And with artificial constructs, they can decide things and take courses of action. And when we say autonomous sensors, yes, you have to look at it in a bigger picture with autonomous systems, which need to have some sort of intelligence to make decisions. And this has also ethical questions. Do we want that?
Yeah, well,
it is,
that's my question.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It is, sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't. These kind of discussions are going to take place. They are already taking place. It's self-driving cars.
Yeah, I know, but if you stick to your research,
yeah.
eNose, how, to me, in my mind, an eNose, how can it ever be a problem?
You have privacy.
Privacy?
Yeah, privacy. If you're carrying this kind of badge,
yeah,
which smells where you are. Well, maybe there are some places that you don't want to be mapped where you've been.
Okay, so yeah.
But yeah, indeed, it's not really invasive. No, it's not really that bad.
Okay. So, but you mean so instead of throwing these sensors over the potatoes, you can also put them in people's pockets or in anywhere, well, and it can measure anything.
A very interesting application that one of our research groups that we are allied with works on. They like to use eNose sensors to detect drug labs in the city, because you can put them on the exhaust of big buildings, and if you disperse this kind of a swarm, yeah. You can put them on drones. You can easily map the exhausts and the signatures of a drug lab you can detect.
Yeah.
But there are privacy things, so you don't want to know what everybody is cooking in that building. So
yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and does that also play part in your research? Because you actually did something to circumvent these privacy issues, right?
Yeah. I think in our case it's a lot more likely it will do some sort of privacy invasive situation that will occur. Yeah, it's going to have a big impact, and I think it's important that people's and governments and companies keep in constant dialogue of, okay, we can do this now. Is this something that is we want to unleash on society, or is that something we should make a note of, like, okay, this is not allowed? And it's very, very hard to do, because what we've noticed with public Wi-Fi tracking is that right now there's no law that prohibits you from hanging your own Wi-Fi routers everywhere and creating some sort of illegal shadow tracking network. So there should be laws, but there should also be like a general ethical notion, like, okay, we can do this, but we shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's it. Half an hour is very short. Unless there's somebody in the audience who wants to ask a final question triggered by what you just said. I think they find it interesting. I don't know. I'm looking at the faces. Yeah. Thanks so much for your presentations and contributions here, Alexander Adreski and Heinze Havinga.
Thank you. Thank you.